let's get going. So for the second part of this event, we have a really excellent panel, which we're going to ask maybe some hard-hitting questions to. And I hope that you are also prepared to add your own questions to this. So write in the chat, ask me in the Q&A section. But without further ado, I want to introduce the panel. And I think we should start with Mathias. So we have Mathias here from Tengai. Welcome up.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And Mathias, before you sit down, if you would like to just introduce yourself, what you do and what you at Tengai do.
Yeah, cool. So Tengai is an automating screening software. I work as head of sales, been here the past 2 years. Prior to this, I was working in the recruitment industry for almost 8 years. So 10 years in the industry. Yeah.
Yeah, we're excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Take a seat.
Thank you.
Wherever you'd like. And next one up, we have Tjernberg from Pipelabs. Come on up. And same thing to you, Per.
Sure.
Introduce yourself and Pipelabs.
Is it on? It is.
I think
Hi,
so.
my name is Per. I'm the CEO of a company called Pipelabs. We do talent advisory within recruitment operations, so more or less anything that has to do with talent acquisition. We do advisory services for that.
Very good. Take a seat. And then we have Rianne. Come on up from Scotty AI.
Thank you.
I think it's on. Let's see.
Is he on?
Yes, I think so.
I lost.
There you go.
Hello.
And same thing to you.
My name is Rianne. I'm head of customer success at Scotty AI. We are an AI orchestration platform, meaning we are focusing on automating recruitment, workforce management, onboarding, offboarding, actually the whole employee journey.
Very nice. All right. Thank you for being here. And last but not least, we have Simon from Trustcruit. So welcome up, Simon. Good job.
Thank you very much, Tove. Thank you very much. I'm Simon. I'm CEO and founder of Trustcruit, which is a survey tool specialized for the talent acquisition and HR part of the market. And we help organizations develop recruitment processes using data. So,
yeah. Excellent. Take a seat. All right. Now, I mean, there's a lot of things that we could be talking about in this panel, which is going to be focused fully on responsible AI. But I think we can start from, maybe we should start with like a baseline question. What's your stance on AI? Because I feel like that might be a good way to start off. And obviously we have 2 AI companies here. I have a hunch what your stance is going to be, but kind of just a simple like pros and cons. Do you have any worries when it comes to AI? Just so that we kind of get to know you in the panel a little bit. And Simon, I think we can start with you.
yes. So when it comes to, I love AI. When it comes to AI, like I'm on the commercial part of Trustcruit. And like commercial means sales for everyone that's not familiar with the terms here. And when it comes to AI, how I use it and how I want the Trustcruit users to use it is I'm always asking myself, is this providing any type of value? Is this not providing any type of value? I think it might not help. I'm a pretty black and white when it comes to these parts. And that's the most important part for me. But I'll speak about the responsible part of AI later on as well.
Yes, of course. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, well, of course, I love AI, but I agree with Simon. It has its limitations, and you have to use it wisely. That's why this topic is great. It can add value, and it can add value to the tasks of recruiters or HR or talent acquisition, but it has its limitations in.
Yeah. What about you?
AI is lovely.
Yeah.
It's massively over. That's what. That's brilliant. We use it every day for a lot of things. Not only for our own work, but also with clients. But it's also very, very overhyped.
All right. And then Mathias.
Yes. I also love AI.
Such a diverse panel and opinion here. I feel like I'm going to have to take the stance of,
yeah.
Everyone that does
we should
not
bring
love
Alex up
AI,
again,
can you
let's
just
see.
leave?
yeah, exactly.
No, but I can agree with AI is everywhere right now, so it's you kind of have to navigate in the in all the platforms to find out, but efficiency part and when you see how well it can execute, and as long as companies have a great like policy for it and working with AI, it can do massively. So yeah, that's what I stand on it.
Very good. I mean, as I said, okay, no surprise that you're all positive, but we are going to talk about kind of the downsides. And I think we should jump in with one of the things that a lot of people are worried about, which we also heard in some of the keynote speeches that we had, which is, of course, bias when it comes to AI. And I think one of the biggest questions here is kind of, is AI the right way to go when it comes to mitigating bias? Because as we heard, I mean, from Alex, one of the speakers who spoke about it, but AI can definitely, it can maybe be less biased than humans in the way that we are biased, but it might also introduce new biases, right? So how do we kind of work with that? And is that the right way to go? And Pat, I'm looking at you to kind of kick this discussion off a little bit.
That's hard. Well, I firmly agree with what Alex's point was from his keynote. So is it better to replace them with humans that are definitely biased, rather than relying on a tool that can at least mitigate a lot of biases that we do face when it comes to recruitment and recruitment processes? It's all about understanding what kind of biases that is on a systemic level. And if we can start understanding that when it comes to AI, then it's definitely better to replace a lot of the decision-making in hiring processes with something that we can at least beforehand understand and circumvent the kind of biases that are in place in those kind of systems. We cannot do that with either recruiter or hiring managers.
No.
And especially not at scale. It's absolutely unfeasible to believe that it would be possible to map out each individual's biases that come into play in the recruitment process and then redesigning the process or how we go about things to mitigate that. But if we can be really aware of the kind of biases that are in place using different LLMs or whatever it might be on the tool side, then yeah, we can circumvent those kind of biases by redesigning the recruitment process.
Yeah, all right. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Mathias, what do you say from kind of the AI developer standpoint? How much emphasis do you put on kind of understanding how your software might perpetuate or mitigate biases, and what do you kind of do to make sure that it doesn't?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest topics when we started developing Tengai was to make sure that we don't want to use AI to make decisions in the product. We want to use AI to enhance candidate experience. We have an avatar that interviews candidates, but also what we want to focus on is what we already know when we're making selection on candidates today. We have a lot of different tools in testing and stuff like that, and we want to make sure that the candidate can express themselves early on, show them who they are and why they applied for the job, instead of like trying to analyze that correct answer and give that another point for a good answer. We want to make sure that we use AI for how we process the data instead, and focusing on the science that we know is a good selection tool. So we've been working with Anders Sjöberg on the Stockholm University to set up the questions that we use in Tengai to make sure that we are focusing on skills, knowledge, not the other things around it.
Yeah. So not personal, like
personality, behavior, and also giving the recruiter a software that they can work with to put in their know-how into the selection of candidates. We want to guide them to not lose any good candidates in the process. We want to make sure that all candidates that are relevant for the role should be shown, and we want to apply the recruiter's know-how afterwards. So yeah, it kind of works, and that's our take on it and how we want to continue to develop things.
And how come you don't want the AI to make any decisions?
It's,
might be a difficult one.
Yeah, because when you start analyzing for say behavior questions, you have problem solving. You have so many different types of answers that you can give in a question like that, and trying to find the correct one with keywords, it feels like it gets too messy. If we can maybe in the future, but then we need to know that it's solid in both ends. So starting off easy with Tengai and trying to like change the narrative of how we look at this and not use AI for any decision making.
Yeah, sounds reasonable. I think as a starting point, good answer to that might be what might be a difficult question. Rianne, what do you say from the Scotty side? Do you have the same kind of mentality or think the same as what Mathias said from Tengai, or do you have a different approach to?
We do it. We actually do pretty much the same. We select on if we do the pre-screening, we do more than only a pre-screening, but if we do the pre-screening process, so meaning a candidate comes in and we contact them to check whether they are a fit. We only select on hard requirements, meaning if you need a driver license to do the job, okay, we ask for that. That's a yes or no question. There's no in between, or years of experience, etc. So we do that, or place where they live. We also recommend other vacancies if it's not a fit, but we stay away from deciding based on soft skills, motivation, etc. But we do ask them, because we collect the data, we want to make sure that everything is, or we want to learn from all the data we get, and we share it with the recruiter in order to prepare the recruiter for the next interview. But I think it's good to see, because AI is biased. That's true. We cannot deny. But the AI can learn from their bias. In the Netherlands, a couple of years ago, we had a big investigation by a TV program called Radar, where they called 70 or something temp agencies and asked for production employees who were, is he out?
Yeah, it keeps going back and forth.
Oh, is it my, sorry.
Don't worry.
So there was a big investigation a couple of years ago for temp agencies, and someone undercover called different temp agencies to ask for production employees and said they should be white, should be male, between 30 and 45. That's completely irresponsible to do so, but actually a big percentage of those temp agencies accepted the question and go look for those people. Big hype, big hot topic in the Netherlands, everybody on training in the recruitment world so that it won't happen again. A couple of years later, same thing happened. So people are harder to learn, are harder to teach, to be unbiased than, for example, AI. So even though there's new bias coming in, if you have a good data protection, if you investigate your data properly, AI can learn from it.
Yeah, I think this is always the case when it comes to new methods of doing something in recruitment, right? Because it's very easy to just look at the new method without comparing it to other methods. So as we heard before, maybe CV screening or maybe like personal letters or something like that, that's a much worse method, but we tend to look at them individually. So we don't always compare the two. So I think that was a really good example to give, where humans are very obviously also problematic in a lot of ways, which I guess we know that quite well in this group that's here today and online as well. All right, I think we should move on to talk about candidate experience. And I know especially that you, Simon, I mean, you work with candidate and employee experience, but when it comes to candidate experience, what are kind of the statistics you are seeing in terms of companies using AI, and how are candidates reacting to that? Is it a positive reaction? Is it a negative? Why?
Yeah, to start with, I don't know if anyone read the report from Microsoft and LinkedIn released earlier this week, where they looked at different age groups of people and the adoption of AI. Anyone read that one? So what they did was that they took the LinkedIn data, and what LinkedIn did was they sent out a survey to users of different ages to collect the kind of survey data, which is good type of data since we're a survey company. But they also used some type of data from Microsoft, where they looked at the actual adoption from the Microsoft different type of AI tools they have in their suite, like in Teams, etc. So they combined this to find out that, for example, and this is true, the adoption of AI, and I don't think it's groundbreaking, but the younger you are, the higher the adoption of AI. So when it comes to candidate experience, I think if you are in a segment where you tend to hire younger people, I think it will be more important to show that you are a company for a good candidate experience, that you are kind of adopting AI, and that you're at least having the discussion. Because if you want to, these younger people that have a much higher adoption of AI, they expect this at workplaces. So that's when it comes to candidate experience, if you're hiring younger people, I think it's important to at least dare to talk about it. Don't close the door. Don't be negative on it. You need to be open for the discussion at least. Make sense?
But if the younger generation, I mean, as you said, the younger you are, the more you use AI, but do you necessarily know about AI in recruitment purposes? What would you recognize? I guess my question is really, would you as a candidate recognize that a process is using AI or not?
I think candidates are not that much aware, and I see a huge upcoming risk here, because I don't know if anyone have watched the videos of ChatGPT 4.0 where ChatGPT talks to each other. It knows emotions, the tone of voice, and it's more conversational. And it's the conversational parts that I'm a bit afraid of what we will see. And I'm also eager to watch this from how it develops, because it's so conversational now. If you are letting AI, ChatGPT 4.0, for example, have conversations with your candidates, what will happen then? So one part, and at that point, I think they will be more aware, because as we know, looking at the Trustcruit data, the most common thing that companies are poor on when it comes to candidate experience is communication. So I think that's why it's close to bring the conversational AI into the recruitment process with conversation. And I'm a bit afraid of, can an AI really represent your company? I don't know. What happens if you send an email to say, hi, John, I know you're in a process here. It's been 6 weeks. Any questions or anything? If an AI sends that email, and let's say that John replies and says, what people are still in the process? Does the AI know if it should reply or not? It's conversational AI. It opens doors. How many are still in the process? Will I be selected? What questions could you ask the AI?
I guess that depends on if you're using generative or not as well.
Yes.
Yeah. I think, Rianne, you look like you want to answer, because you're kind of doing this at Scotty, right?
This is exactly what we are
Yes,
doing at Scotty.
I know. So it's
Yeah, so good question, actually. But with everything in AI or technology, you can set rules, of course. So if a candidate asks how many people are still in the process and you don't want the bot to answer it, then it doesn't answer, of course, and it will set up another answer. But in my experience, or in Scotty's experience, I should say, we can add real value as an AI in the candidate experience. I mean, for example, in the pre-screening process, imagine that you apply on a job in the middle of the night, doesn't matter when, and within 5 minutes, you know whether you are fit for the job or not, because you had a conversation with a bot. That bot schedules an interview with the recruiter or the hiring manager for the next round. That can take place, if there's a suitable time slot, that can take place the next morning. So within 8 hours or something, you know exactly where you stand in the hiring process in this case. So that's a big benefit. All the other topics you mentioned, I think, comes with rules. Set rules for your AI. Make sure that he is guided, he or she, whatever, is guided by what he needs to do.
I love this.
Good discussion.
Yeah, since it's not only communication, it's also speed that is important.
Yes.
We know from the data. So
Yeah, and that's an aspect we need to take into account, of course. But Per, I mean, when it comes to candidate experience, I know you have maybe a different take, kind of lifting the view a little bit from this. Let's see.
So just firstly, trying to connect to the previous conversation, why would it be dangerous to let them know how many candidates are in the process?
If they ask for the names.
Well, as once more, you can say rules, but why would it be bad to be transparent about how many people are in the process? That's great. That's actual candidate experience. Understanding, okay, what's the competition like?
Maybe that was my worst example. If you would ask, like, am I still in the process? Will I get the job?
Yeah.
It's,
And I would say that it might not be that bad for a candidate experience to be able to ask those questions and get real answers instead of the kind of bullshit answers they get today.
I never said, it's just,
No,
I think it's intriguing.
Yeah, I was just saying, I think that kind of transparency would be good because that's kind of like, I think the point that Tove was gunning for. So within our community, and now we're not speaking about individual recruiters or individual companies, I would say that as a community within the TA space, the idea that we prioritize candidate experience is absolute bullshit. Because the candidate experience at a compounded level is terrible. Terrible. And this is a safe space. I mean, we don't need to point fingers here, but I mean, you must be aware of how shitty it is to apply for jobs in today's market. It's terrible. And if you're wondering if that's true, use Reddit, go into recruiting hell and see the actual experience from people. Your CEO did an experiment last autumn, I think.
Yeah.
Applied and got in contact with about 100 companies and half of them replied. So the fact that we have this idea that by individual actors saying that we prioritize candidate experience, that leads to good candidate experience is an illusion. And I don't want to point fingers to anybody, but for say that you're a test company and you actually try to design the experience from a candidate experience point of view. What is the experience when you have to do 12 of the tests for different organizations because you need a job? It's going to be terrible. And I'm not that convinced that you can actually make filling out a form for the fourth a good experience.
No.
I'm not convinced that is the case. And if you are an individual company, an ATS, and say that you prioritize candidate experience, why do you allow that you can ask for a cover letter? We know that cover letters are shit, right? In this room, it's safe. It's terrible. That's not something that we can use to make educated, evidence-based decisions in a recruitment process. So if you actually want to prioritize candidate experience, why do you allow it? Because the clients want it, right? So I would say as a community, we need to take a bit more responsibility when it comes to the compounded candidate experience. So even if you're individual recruiters or companies or service providers that are gunning for candidate experience, it's just bullshit. That's my take.
Yeah, I think it's a good take. Mathias, what do you say in terms of like, is AI the solution to this? If we ponder that Pat is right about this kind of take for the community.
I think especially speed when it comes to faster decision making. Candidates are, and Elin did a survey where she applied for, I think it was 70 jobs, and I think she still gets letters from the companies you are rejected or something, and it's I was
auto-generated.
Autumn,
I'm not sure. We chose a more qualified candidate. Oh, well, thank you.
Exactly. I believe that AI can help in certain ways, and what I wanted to look at when it comes to candidate experience is because we get a lot of good praise from candidates when it comes to using Tengai, because it's an avatar you meet. It takes 15 minutes for the candidate to do their application. You're done. But just to get something else than answer these questions, get 50 tests, do the test, or do you want to apply for another role, do 50 more. And it's when I talk to TA teams and HR teams to look at how their process looks, many people aren't kind of like, they don't see it in the candidate perspective. So it's easy to kind of narrow it down to see what we can do, because we want a lot of information. Candidates want to give the relevant information. They want to be fast, quick. They apply for 7 jobs. Make it easy. We did with Tengai, and we had it was a great topic because you can reuse your interview with Tengai. So if you've done one, you have done your like foundation in the interview, and you can reapply with that. just by letting candidates own their own data instead of the company owning the data. They allow the company to evaluate the data. That's one thing, but that was something that we saw in the candidate experience just rose a lot because they felt in control and they felt like they didn't have to do it all over again repetitively or same questions. So you need to look at the whole process. What are we asking of the candidates? What do we want to collect from the candidates? Is it relevant? Yeah. And I think we're mentioned all good things here, but speed I think is one of them. It needs to go fast.
Absolutely. Simon,
Yeah.
did you want to add?
I can agree with Per that it's like candidate experience. He said candidate experience is shit. It's companies don't value candidate experience, and I agree with that. At the same time, some type of sunshine story as well is that we have benchmarked, like we've collected data from over 3 million unique candidate experiences. And the good thing is that it's an upwards going trend when it comes to Net Promoter Score. So yes, it's not good. It's not at the level where we want it to be, but it's better this year than it was last year. And it's better than it was the previous year. And so it's been going up for 4 years in Net Promoter Score, which is the research-based quality metric of how you collect feedback about recruitment processes. So yes, it's still not at a level where we feel confident, but companies do value it more and more, and we see an upwards trend. So I just wanted to add in some data that we have from our database. So it's, but still, Pat, I agree with you. There's
Lots to be
work
done
to be done.
Yeah, for sure. Pat, did you want to add
Yeah,
something?
and that's great. I do believe those numbers are skewed because you go to trust value what the candidates are saying, right? How many companies are not using you because it isn't even in the realm of what's on the table or something that's prioritized. It's lovely to hear that it's going up, it's an upward trend, but I'm talking macro level, not like only 3 million. That's a lot of data points, but if you look at it even from a Swedish perspective, Nordic, or even globally, it's still a very minuscule amount of data in comparison.
But it's getting more and more. It's more and more companies, so it's still an
Good point. But I think let's move on from this one, and we can continue the discussion on this afterwards. But I think when it comes to candidates, we can't stop at just discussing candidate experience from the recruiter side, because candidates are now also using AI from their perspective. And when it comes to candidates using AI in recruitment process, that kind of flips the entire script upside down, right? Because if we only look at recruiters using it, it's very beneficial. It's time efficient. We can just be focusing on the one-on-one interviews that we have, and we can really provide a good candidate experience. But when candidates are using it, it might also make our methods of evaluation not mean as much, right? As we heard previously as well, candidates are using it for example, fulfilling screening interviews or questionnaires, assessments of different sorts. And when that happens, we're not really getting an accurate view of the candidate, right? So what are kind of your thoughts on candidates using AI themselves? And how can recruiters, people in this room or online who are, actively recruiting, how should they tackle this? Should they just allow candidates to do whatever they want, or should they somehow adjust their way of thinking? I don't know if anybody wants to take on this one. It's quite a big question.
No, but when it comes, I mean, everybody's using AI, so we can't forget that or ignore that. But if we have a software or product where I think when you use AI, you use it to make it easier for you. It's a lot of, you may say that you've been doing 7 tests and it gets so boring at time, or you get tired of it, then you can use AI because it's going to be an easy tool to get rid of that task. It's almost the same as we do with recruiters. We want to take away the mundane tasks with our product, but if we can make the experience with an avatar or a chatbot or whatever you're using easy to use, fun to use, or more trusted and transparent, so they know what it's actually collecting. I'm not sure if you want to use AI in it. That's just my point of view in this, but making sure that the software product that you're using is easy to use for the candidates. Transparency is key. And don't apply it to maybe a process that isn't. You need to look at the full process. What are you doing? What are you using for tools to assess candidates? And AI won't save a broken process. You need to look at the whole picture and see what you are doing there to make it easier for candidates, give them the possibility to actually feel like, okay, I'm self-assessing, or I'm giving my assessment. I'm telling who I am. That's what I believe.
Yeah.
Might lower the
I know, Pat, you're going to get to respond as well, but
Yeah.
Mathias, just if we flip that to kind of the candidate side,
Yeah.
you said AI can't fix a broken recruitment process, but can AI fix a broken CV if we look at it from that aspect? Like, could a candidate optimize themselves to the point that they're more hireable than they should be?
Yeah, and I think we're doing that right now. That's why CV is such a hard thing to use in assessment, because CVs is just, it's text that you write down on, and you need to control in other steps. So I see that if you have a process where you have some demands, or you're looking at some things that you really need to have in this role, ask for that. Don't ask for the full resume. Don't make candidates rewrite the full CV. Make it easier for them to, yeah, I have a driver's license. Cool, that's it. So trying to challenge the CV part here too. Why are we using AI to make a CV better? Because we need to stand out in the process, because everybody's collecting CVs, and we do it in other ways.
In a different way. Yeah. Pat.
So our basic thinking is something along the lines of the lowest common denominator among all candidates is that they're human. And what does a human do when they're in a situation where they understand that there's competition for something? They're in a need of a job because they need a roof over their head and food on the table. They're going to try to maximize their own potential to get the thing that makes the food happen. And that's why they're using AI. Besides replacing mundane tasks, redoing the test for the 7th time, or filling out from the CV for the blah-de-blah time. So our take on it is, so people are humans with an AI policy in place, with an actual selection process that adapts to that. So we give them what we expect from them. This is when you can use this is how you can use it. The majority of people will then align towards that. You're always going to get cheaters, but they're very, very few. The same way that we have very, very few people in comparison to the rest of the population who commit crimes, because that's not really what humans tend to do. We tend to follow rules. If we're asked to do something, we tend to do it. If we ask a direct question, we tend to answer it. So, I mean, building from the presumption that everybody who's involved in a recruitment process as a candidate is a human first and foremost, you can kind of play into that. Because as soon as you try to create standards or practices or products or processes that is designed not for the rule, but for the exception. And the exception is the cheater, the liar, the person stealing, or wherever it might be, you're gonna have a process that is misaligned towards actually building a good candidate experience. So, I mean, having an AI policy in place, being very clear about what the expectations are, saying that for this interview, you're not allowed to, or for this case, you are allowed to, if you tell us how, and so on and so forth. I firmly believe that is a much better way of dealing with AI-powered candidates than trying to figure out how we can find those few that are actually cheating. People are going to embellish their CVs. They don't like to write cover letters, so they take the ad, put it into ChatGPT or another thing and say, write me a perfect whatever it might be, and then they use that. That's where we are, and that's something that we just need to adapt to. Having systems like Scotty, or I need to mention a competitor, so it's not you, Bland, or something else that can actually automate that process, doing it in a believable way, might be better than trying to focus on finding those few cheaters.
Yeah. But in the interest of kind of fairness, and again, talking about kind of being ethical, being responsible, should you then kind of push all candidates to do this, or should you just have a policy that it's allowed? Because if it's helping candidates emphasize themselves and some people choose not to use it, it's still going to be a divide between those two groups, right?
I'm going to go ahead and throw a Mark Twain quote out there, because that feels so reasonable and relevant. So the quote being, those who don't read do not have an advantage over those who choose not to read. And I would claim that it's kind of similar. I mean, what is it that we've been saying here? I mean, we are very AI friendly. Alex showed some figures, but also you talked about it as well. We're moving into a new age, a new something that requires new skill sets and new ways of working, and it's going to impact everything from what we do in our home life to our work life to the interview phase to whatever. If you choose to actively not use the kind of tools that will be required of you in the working life moving forward, at least for a majority of different occupations, maybe that should disqualify you from actually getting the job. In the same way, if you choose not to read, maybe I shouldn't come to you for the most deep of thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I think when it comes to different types of roles, I mean, now we're kind of talking white collar, blue collar roles. Should you use AI in those
Absolutely.
processes? You say absolutely. What do you say, Rianne?
Yes, but not for AI-enabled candidates.
Yeah.
I think for blue collars, we need to make it easier to apply. So, for example, if you are using AI in your screening process, then a phone number and a name should be enough to start the whole application, process, hiring process. So in that case, for white collar, I totally agree with you that if a candidate doesn't want to use it, another one does, then you're in a disadvantage. But for blue collar, that should be enough because AI can do the rest. He can fill the ATS or the CRM or whatever you need to be filled, and he can scan. And in that case, having a conversation with a candidate will make him or her answer more honestly than sitting behind a computer and using AI to present yourself better.
Very good point. Simon, do you see any difference in your companies between like white collar, blue collar roles in terms of the candidate experience right now, or if it's AI powered as well?
Yeah, we do. There are definitely different expectations. There are so many different expectations when it comes, sorry,
No worries.
between blue collar and white collar. For example, the NPS is as low as from tech roles. So tech people have higher expectations on the recruitment process. It's a true fact. They also have higher expectations of recruitment agencies. So yeah, it differs as well.
And I think that's something you also have to keep in mind, right, when implementing tools. Like, what is the candidate pool that you're actually looking for, and are they accepting this new type of technology, or do we have to think about it in a different way? But okay, yeah.
That's the big benefit, right? There's not one.
Sorry.
You can adjust it to anything.
Yeah, can do anything. Yeah, I love it. Okay, we're gonna wrap up before we go into questions from the audience. But I think something that we need to kind of talk about also is job disruption in general. So, I mean, there's countless studies on this right now, but a lot of people are really scared that their jobs are going to be, you know, completely obliterated, and we don't. What am I going to do in the future? You know, if you saw our video where me and Sarah were terrified, I had a rant about, you know, how the coffee machine won't have anybody to serve, and I think that's kind of true for a lot of people, that they feel that genuine fear that, okay, the faster this progress is happening, what am I actually going to be doing at work? So when it comes to HR and TA, what's kind of their responsibility in terms of navigating this and understanding how can we work with upskilling, reskilling, and where should we replace people with AI, and how do we navigate that conversation with our employees? Because that is going to be a big conversation. Even if it doesn't happen, people still have the fear, right? So any of you feel like you want to answer this one? Very difficult one, I think. Rianne, go ahead.
Yes, it's very difficult one, but it's all about transparency, I guess. And from what I notice with the conversations we have with potential clients and clients is that actually asking recruiters about their job is that most of them aren't that happy with all the other tasks except from talking to candidates, or at least candidates that fit the hard requirements of the job. So getting rid of all the paperwork and all the extra things they have to do in order to get the right candidates in an interview, and making them free to add real value to the candidate experience, but also the hiring manager experience, makes them less preparing the future, actually, is what in my experience. But I think skills will differ, of course, because if you can contact every candidate or every potential candidate for your company, and even if they don't fit vacancy A, but they fit vacancy B, you have a bigger talent pool, meaning that probably the recruiter will work the other way around. They have the candidate, now they have to look for the right job. So maybe more job coaches, more, so they level up in their work, probably. It's
Your take on it.
yeah.
Pat, what do you say? Should companies kind of think about this, HR departments? Or should they just let people be scared,
Absolutely. I think they should scare them.
right?
That should be the job. No, of course not. Everything depends. I listened to a really interesting talk of the CHRO of one of the bigger governmentally owned companies here in Sweden recently. And her perspective, which is one that I find myself aligning with a lot, is that, well, the lowest common denominator is that people are humans. Is it within the scope of HR's mission to take care of the full human? I tend to veer towards no, because that's something that maybe a lot of people feel aligned to. That's within the realm of HR, people and culture. But at the end of the day, they work for a company. So when push comes to shove, if they're placed between taking care of the human or executing something on the company's name, they're going to do that. At the same time, I don't believe that it's their role to not take that into account. It's putting a lot of pressure on a TA and HR function, something that is so societal more than something else. So that was a really long way of saying, I don't know. But I do believe that I'm butchering the pronunciation of her name, but Rossio mentioned previously, like we've gone through this before.
Yeah.
We are not, we are replacing jobs, a lot of jobs. Recruiters, not in the least, like with your solution and or others, what you're doing. I mean, we are actively trying to change the way that recruitment is done by implementing and looking at AI tools. And that's fine, because we're not going to replace the human, we're going to replace the job. And that I firmly believe in. Like, we've already been through this on a societal level before. Does it feel a bit newish now, since it was quite a while since we saw groundbreaking revolution? I don't believe that internet was enough to really push that. We're more talking about like the proper industrial revolution. We've been through it. Like,
yeah. So we just need to learn how to manage it now on an individual level, it seems like. Mathias, for you, how do you kind of see, I mean, as we heard now, this is shaping kind of the roles of the future when it comes to recruitment and TA, and how we work is obviously going to be different. But what do you see happening 10 years down the line? How do you see kind of the recruitment process functioning? Is it going to be vastly different, or is it going to be the same type of funneling, but with add-ons?
Far off in the future now, but what I can see right away when we are implementing Tengai in different recruitment organizations and they are working, is kind of cool to see how fast people are changing to it. So if we look at that, what we can see is that recruiters maybe tend to go more, they start like looking at what they've been doing in the interviewing process when they meet a candidate, for example, and starting to work out new ways to find out more information or talk about motivation, start talking more and changing that pretty fast, which is pretty cool to see because they get their information from elsewhere. So that's one of the like cool benefits we see. The scary part is where you don't understand maybe the AI that's coming in and you start backing away from it, and that's when you get scared. Oh, it's going to take my job. I'm going to do this. But we are just solving some parts in the recruitment process for people. But just see how fast they adapt already. But it's hard to look 10 years in the future to see where we're at. But we're going to see more automation. We're going to see an easier process. And I think the recruiter's role is going to change a lot. But I won't answer what I think it would be, because I think time will tell. But just what I see now in in 1 year, how they changed the behavior and changed the way to conduct interviews and be more efficient is really cool to see.
Yeah. I mean, we're in for an exciting future. I
Really.
think that's something we can all agree on. But I want to take some questions as well to see what the audience, if we have any questions, anything that you want to ask the panel or any comments that you have on anything that's been said. And online, of course, as well, Sarah. Nothing in the room? Yes, we had a couple of, yeah. Let's see.
Thank you. Thank you.
It is on. It's on, don't worry.
Really interesting thoughts. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives. I do have a question. It's very high level, perhaps not so much into the details as we've been talking about, but it's about the long-term effects of AI in recruitment and talent overall. We see that a lot of roles that have been traditionally executed by more junior roles are going to be automated, not by specific tools, rather by new workflows that we're going to set with AI. How are we going to produce, how are we going to create and enable talent to become senior if they never go through the junior stages of getting to a leadership position?
Excellent question. Anyone in particular you want to answer from the panel, Rocio?
Feel free to choose.
Yeah. Anyone? No? How do you want to
right answer?
go?
I think that's a brilliant question. That's one of the more interesting one, at least where I am in my mindset. Like, how are we going to facilitate that growth and that learning curve that it means to be junior, to be sure tasks that might seem a bit more mundane, but it's how we kind of build upon each other to create someone that has more experience and can take on a bit more advanced and complex things. And I have no idea, but I find it absolutely fascinating to think about. We're seeing it in our, like, on the inside of our company. Like, we can do a lot that previously would have been done either by a senior together with juniors, where you give them direction, maybe they execute, or just as a task that can be wholly directed towards a more junior individual. And if you don't get that training, we can also see that the end results get quite heavily affected. So you expect a certain level of result, but someone, I have never really done that. And you need to turn back. So I don't know, but I think that effect is one of the more fascinating when it comes to specifically white collar positions.
Yeah.
Could it also be that all concepts are kind of changing? So it might be that like with the Per mentioned, the industrial revolution, like change has been constant. That's the only thing that is constant, to bring up quotes. So it might be that junior was changing in the industrial revolution and senior was also changing in industrial revolution. That might be the case now as well. That roles are how we see on the junior and senior roles. If that's important to anyone, I don't know. But it's I think the terms might change.
Yeah. How do you want to add to?
Isn't that why we started having like the master and apprentice system, which is still in place for a lot of skilled work still today? Like, we build up this wholly new set of having that traversal of information from someone more senior to someone more junior, possibly using AI. I would be surprised if it wasn't, but some sort of leveling system. And potentially that would mean that we don't get to write X amount of years of experience, which would be lovely.
I talked to a developer one time. He had 5 years of experience, and I said, okay, I think it's a good time to print out like senior. I don't want to be senior. So it's like, why not?
Yeah.
It's no, I don't strive for that. Okay, it's about what I do. It's about what I can. It's I don't care about senior. Might go away.
Which would facilitate a bigger impact in skill-based hiring.
Yeah.
Which
For
I
sure.
think we all agree is good.
Yeah. I hope so. We had another question behind you, Rocio.
Hi. Very interesting topic. Thank you for all of thoughts earlier. I've worked in talent for quite a few years in my career, and I agree, not all talent processes are built equally, not all experiences are built equally, but I think especially now, the processes that are more geared towards a candidate experience are certainly the ones also that stand out. So candidates talk about it positively, you get Glassdoor, you get dinner table conversations, etc. So I think from that positioning, it's also really interesting to get that piece right. But what I think I'm missing from the conversations as well was around the fact that candidates are also looking at you, whether they want to work for you, right? And I feel like the more you put the automation pieces at the beginning of the conversations, the less impact you have on how do they feel about it? What's the culture? How can you sell the company? You know, are they also interested in having those conversations? So I think I love AI, by the way, I use it every day, but I think you need to be careful about where you put it, especially with candidate experience. And I think my other kind of roundabout point around that was that since the COVID pandemic, we've seen a lot of people reskilling. We've seen a lot of people doing complete career pivots, career changes. Like, you know, we saw, you know, SAS took all of their air hostesses and turned them into nurses to help with COVID, for example. Like, how are your tools, I guess, how are they planning or factoring the reskilling aspect into that, where you need to not just look at like what you've done, but also like what are the possibilities of what you can do and the skills that build over time for the new kind of roles and responsibilities coming into the workforce.
Rianne, do you want to take that one on?
Yeah.
Let's see if we can get your mic to work, or
I'm
if
not
we
sure
can
if-
send the mic.
Is
up.
it okay?
works?
Okay. Okay.
You're back.
I'm back. Yes. I am going to recap your question, but you are asking about reskilling in particular.
So I don't have in-depth knowledge as to how your tools work, but I
Yeah.
assume there's some element of let's look at what happened in the past to predict whether they're suitable for the roles that we have in the here and now. But with the reskilling aspect, you know, nurses would probably never be hired. Sorry, flight attendants would never be hired to be nurses, but actually that whole movement happened. So how do your tools then support the complete pivots in careers and trajectories that are happening?
I think that's the big part where we don't select or reject based on soft skills or motivation or actually education, because that's a very broad definition. Every country, but every region, every school names their education different. So we stay away from that. It's just if you have a driver license, experience, if you live nearby, etc. Those are the things AI select on right now as we are standing here. So therefore, the flight attendant who wants to be a nurse can still be in scope if they live close by, if they have some other hard requirements, and we ask for their motivation or their future plans or whatever you as a client wants to know, or employer, to prepare the recruiter for the interview. About your other question for the actually employer branding, and if the employee wants to choose you or the candidate wants to choose you, we sell the job as well during a conversation. And I think if you look at the first conversation a recruiter has at the moment without AI is or sending an email and invite for a conversation, or doing a short phone call with checkbox questions. Okay, do you have this, this, and this? Okay, then you can be scheduled for an interview. That's what Scotty takes over, but also names all the benefits of the job. So if the candidate asks, for example, okay, what was the salary again? Because he applies in 20 other jobs as well. He will answer.
I really like this part when it comes to the responsible parts, because you are well situated about the subject, about the discussion, and that's one part of taking responsibility, knowing where your ability starts and stops.
Mhm.
So I really like this, Rianne.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and I was gonna agree that looking at the role, so even if a reskilling is part of it or a candidate has done something else, what we want to know is the position that you are having open right now. What are the knowledge that you need, or what do you want to know of the candidate? So focusing on that role and answering those questions for the candidate, and be able to express themselves early on, so they get a chance to show who they are and why they want to work at your place, and focus on the right questions when it comes to what do you really want to make sure that the candidate have, or what do you want to know, I think that's super important, because then you have the possibility later on to get to know the candidate in person and make sure you want to know what have they done or whatever you ask in the interview. So focusing on the skills and knowledge or whatever they have, personality, behavior, that doesn't change that much for a candidate. So those answers will probably be same even if they've done something else prior to what they are applying for right now. So I think that's also important, that we follow what we know in making good decisions.
Excellent. Thank you for that answer. Any questions online, Sarah?
Yes.
Just let's take one and then wrap up, and then we'll do the rest of them offline. Okay.
Completely obsolete.
Can you
Yes.
just repeat the question? I
Yeah.
didn't
Yes.
hear.
Will recruiters be completely obsolete? What's your view on, what did you call it? Something talent-centric? No? Candidate-driven processes. And will the recruiter be completely obsolete going forward?
Yes, in its current form.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Clear answer. Any other?
I agree in its current form.
Yeah.
Probably will take a long, long time if they are
Yeah.
Yeah.
really gone, because you need empathy, you need human thinking, you need criticism of human beings. So the current form, yes, it's
Yeah.
already happening, probably,
Yeah.
at a lot of companies.
Yeah. Did you want to add something?
Maybe add a bit of nuance, I realized. I thought it was like a just no question, and it was like, oh, you actually need to contextualize.
Sorry.
Great. But still, I would say that the answer is yes. Like for most recruiters, most of the time in their work is doing things that we can very clearly perceive being replaced by AI.
Yeah.
It could be an interview, it can be a screening call, it could be CV selection, it can be sourcing, it could be, and suddenly you kind of start running out of things, which usually tends to take up a lot of time in a recruiter's day to day. That doesn't mean that the value provided isn't there. One observation that we're doing is that what's happening now is such a brilliant, brilliant time to start getting the basics right, which most don't. Most are not doing clear grading rubrics, formulating scoring guides that the full team aligns on. Most are not making sure that we have distribution towards the targeted audiences and making sure that we can reach them with some sort of messaging that makes sense and resonates to them on a human level, using storytelling than just factual bullet pointed list, which is, oh, terrible. I mean, when was the last time you read a bullet list and went like, yeah, that's really sexy. I don't know. Because you don't.
I love those.
Oh, you do.
There you
Yeah.
go.
I'm going to give you a call and you have to explain to me why, because I don't get it. No, but so when I said yes in its current form, yes, we can take what tends to be the majority of a recruiter's day to day and transforming that to being actual value add. Because my firm belief is that it isn't value add to do a lot of the things that we now can replicate. As I said, having a conversation, if you haven't talked to Scotty or planned, do it now. And with 4.0, I mean, the response time is down to almost nothing. It's like having an actual conversation. I mean, it's not that hard figuring out that if you can automate all of the reach out to 700 or 400 or 4,000 individuals without actually connecting that to a recruiter or recruiters, why would you want to have recruiters still in play there? But we can do other things that adds so much more value than that specific task.
Yeah, excellent. I think last question for you, Mathias. If you have one tip, like how should you get started working with AI in a responsible way as a recruiter today?
Start like looking at the process, what you have today, what you are lacking in time to hire, whatever it can be. Be critical of your own process. Start researching. We were talking, me and Alex here before, on automation bias and stuff like that. Make sure to know what the software is giving you, what type of grades do candidates get in the system, why do they get that scoring, is it based off something. Make sure to get to know it and try it out. Don't be too afraid to start moving, because I believe the candidate market is starting to get really mature in this area and they want to have innovative processes. So And yeah, start communicating internally, start to challenge the traditional recruitment process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent advice, I think. Thank you so much for listening to our panel and for joining us for this event.